Just seeing your face makes me sick. Just hearing your voice makes me so
The most tragic depiction of the strongest. This is interesting. Let's check this out.
angry that my head hurts. Even after living hundreds of years, what I remember vividly is your face, the thing I most want to forget. I can't remember my father's face, or my mother's face, or my wife's face, or my children's faces. Only yours is clear. You are like the unequaled sun, and all the human beings around you have no path other than yearning, reaching out their hands and writhing in agony until they become ashes. I could never grab a hold of anything at all. I abandoned my home, I abandoned my wife and children, I abandoned my humanity. I cut down my descendants and abandoned being a samurai. But even all that wasn't enough. You said that those who master their paths all reach the same place, but I never did. I could not see the same world that you did. A while ago, I made a video on the greatest depiction of the strongest surrounding the character of Vyrah. But after making it, I felt kinda bad because there was another character who I've always thought did a
Okay.
made a video on the greatest I could not see the same world that you did. A while ago, I made a video on the greatest depiction of the strongest surrounding the character of Vyrah. But after making it, I felt kinda bad because there was another character who I've always thought did a fantastic job at representing the concept for the strongest, and who is arguably just as deserving of the greatest to do it. And that's Yoriichi Sugikuni from the series of Demon Slayer. Now the intro is kinda long, so I'll get to the point. In this video, I'll be explaining the story of Yoriichi, his overwhelming strength in the series of Demon Slayer, and why this overwhelming strength is far more nuanced than most may think. With that said, since I value the time of both you and I, let's just cut the intro short and get straight into the video. Before we speak about Yoriichi's strength, I think it's important that I give you some context behind the character and his role in the story of Demon Slayer. Yoriichi is a character from over 500 years in the past. He's a character we never meet directly, but we meet him through the memories of multiple characters in the cast, as some of them are immortal and others can see the memories of the past somehow. Although we get little bits of information on the character of Yoriichi here and there, we eventually get the entire story from Yoriichi himself in a flashback that Tanjiro, the protagonist of the story, had managed to inherit from Sumiyoshi, a very distant ancestor from 500 years in the past. Yoriichi had been very good friends with Sumiyoshi throughout his entire life, so he wanted Sumiyoshi to hear his story before he would make his very next decision. Before beginning his life story, Yoriichi starts with expressing his gratitude for the beauty of the world and being given the opportunity to be born in it. As he begins his story, he essentially pieces together his entire past that we've gotten from many characters in the story, but from his perspective. Like his brother Michikatsu said, they had a mother who loved him very much, but she was worried about him due to him choosing to not speak, although he really could always speak. And to Yoriichi's father, he was unwanted. So after his mother passed away, he decided to run away from home. Yoriichi, interestingly enough, chooses to exclude his transcendent aptitude for wielding a sword.
I love the fact that like the depiction of the strongest within like Demon Slayer is actually someone enjoying life. Like these edgy type of characters that like are like the biggest and like have this like dark story. I love this noble type of philosophy. You know, you reached the height that you wanted, and you actually enjoyed the road that led you to it, and you still enjoy where you are, who you are, and what it is you're living, you know, in a certain way. Compared to fuck you, I am the strongest, I have a dark story, or I am like and I am yeah, usually they're not like as interesting, you know, like.
Whereas Michikatsu did not only mention it, but he fixated on it. Not only this,
Even the story of like I kept trying until it worked, right? Gets stale over time, you know, because like well, the way he displays it, Yoriichi also try until he made it. But the perspective is that his focus is not the fact that like he kept going, but that even now, like he loved the world, and this is what led him to become the greatest, you know?
Yoriichi, interestingly enough, chooses to exclude his transcendent aptitude for wielding a sword, whereas Michikatsu did not only mention it, but he fixated on it. Not only this, but Michikatsu's story does show that their father preferred Yoriichi after witnessing his ability to wield a blade. But obviously Yoriichi does not see that as a part of himself, so he still saw his father as somebody who wanted nothing to do with him. Now as this video continues, pay attention to this exact behavior, because it all comes around. As Yoriichi runs and runs non-stop for many hours without the need to take a break, he comes across a girl named Uta who had lost her entire family. The two get along fairly well, and through her, Yoriichi comes to understand and learn that the way he sees the world is entirely different from all those around him. Now look, when Yoriichi's talent for the blade was discovered by those at the temple, he would explain what he was seeing and how he was so good with it, but his explanations wouldn't click for anybody there. It's because he had access to the see-through world the moment he was born. This is a level of mastery with combat that the strongest characters in the series reached at their prime ages and strength. Yoriichi was born with this. But the see-through world isn't only indicative of one's strength, but their selflessness. Yoriichi being born with this just wasn't indicative of his power, but indicative of his purpose in the world. As Yoriichi and Uta would live and grow together, she would eventually become pregnant. But Yoriichi would set out to find a midwife for her and come back to their home to find that her and her child that she had been carrying were eliminated by a demon. Another person may not hesitate to trample upon someone whose life you value more than your own. When Yoriichi saw this, he sat next to her and their child for 10 days straight, cradling their bodies, and a demon slayer would eventually find him and tell him to mourn them through prayer. As he continues the story, Yoriichi expresses that he simply wanted to enjoy a quiet life with his family, just to sleep alongside his wife and child and hold their hands. That would have been enough for a man like him, but even that cannot come true. Because the truth is, demons exist in this beautiful world. Yoriichi would become a demon slayer and teach all of the other demon slayers, including the Hashira, about breathing techniques in order to help them slay demons far more efficiently. And eventually, his brother Michikatsu would join the demon slaying corps as well. All of this would lead up to Yoriichi eventually facing and confronting Muzan himself. In the moment that he laid eyes on him, he felt as if everything in his life led up to this moment. He had been born for none other than the purpose of slaying Muzan Kibutsuji. You'd think after seeing Muzan single-handedly take on all of the demon slayers himself in the story that he would be easily able to handle his own against Yoriichi, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, Yoriichi cuts him down with absolute ease. There was no contest, but Yoriichi would take the time to ask Muzan what the value of a life is, and this would give him the opportunity to explode himself into 1800 different pieces and escape from Yoriichi. Muzan would more than likely never show himself to Yoriichi due to his defeat, so this was his only chance at putting the monster down. This was a massive failure for the ultimate demon slayer. Coupled with the fact that Michikatsu would choose to take Muzan's blood to become a demon himself, would result in the demon slaying corp to not only banish Yoriichi, but say that he should take his own life in order to make up for his brother's betrayal. Of course, the leader did not agree with any of this, but Yoriichi seemed to have just left anyway. As Yoriichi concludes his tale, he says that he believes that he was born with the sole purpose of defeating Muzan, but he was lacking. And in the end, he failed at his only purpose for being born. And not only this, more people will lose their lives because of this failure, and this pains him. Yoriichi finishes his story up, but Sumiyoshi's daughter appears and asks for Yoriichi to hug her. He lifts her up and she laughs, this causing Yoriichi to have an emotional breakdown on the spot. As Yoriichi cries, Tanjiro just says that he wishes someday, somehow, Yoriichi could just have a tiny bit of good to come into his life. And soon after this, Yoriichi would choose to display his sword techniques to Sumiyoshi due to his family wanting to see them out of interest. But Sumiyoshi would burn these moves into his memory, and upon the demonstration finishing, Yoriichi would begin to leave with Sumiyoshi asking him to please return someday. But Yoriichi would simply turn around, give him a sad look, and bestow his earrings onto him. These actions make Sumiyoshi realize and understand that Yoriichi would never return. He goes on to yell at Yoriichi, telling him that you saved our lives so we will carry on your legacy. Your life is not without value, and never think that you accomplished nothing. In fact, I will pass down these ornaments and the sun breathing to my future generations. And this makes Yoriichi turn around and say thank you. I went on for a bit about Yoriichi's history, as I found it quite important to understanding not only his strength, but what makes him such an
It is an interesting story. It is an interesting story of someone reaching power, staying humble, and I like this. I like this a lot.
Impactful and tragic character. To speak about his overwhelming strength and
While caring and being careful about others, but completely cold to himself.
why it has such a strong impact to people is because we've been chasing down Muzan the entire story of Demon Slayer. Every single thing our characters have done has been with the sole intention of reaching this point. And when they finally reach this point after many chapters of struggle, we see that Muzan is more than capable of fighting them off easily. Matter of fact, Muzan is able to hold all of them off, while being extremely nerfed by multiple poisons that some characters have spent most of the series concocting specifically for him, and he's still overwhelming everybody easily. This was like a 9 versus 1 he was doing while standing completely still. So when we see Yoriichi confront Muzan in a flashback that was taking place in the middle of this final massive battle, we see that this guy managed to completely cut down a full power Muzan in 3 pages in 1 strike. And when you see something like this, you would think it's all he needs for his role as the strongest to be certified. But nope, he has many more insane feats in the story that were shown even before this. Even his death was a flex. As Yoriichi would find his brother turned demon at an extremely old age, his brother would express confusion, as all slayers who have been marked will pass away before they turn 25 years old. And of course, Yoriichi was the anomaly. Yoriichi says nothing but, "My sympathies, my brother." Kokushibo, seeing this, just saw an old man aged out of his prime. He saw no threat in the hoarse voice that had come out of him. He felt a little confused and uneasy as Yoriichi had never cried in front of him. It was an oddity never before seen, but despite this, he must steel his resolve and put down the old man in front of him. But the moment Yoriichi touched his blade, everything changed. An indescribable pressure was cast on the shoulders of Upper Moon 1, and he couldn't see any openings in Yoriichi's stance. Nothing had ever changed. As he says, "Here I come," the demon is instantly cut with the same power and speed that was from his very prime. He stood no chance. This man, and this man alone, was outside of the laws of this world, receiving the favors of the god upon himself as casually as he breathes. Kokushibo wanted to strike, to take out all of his rage on his brother, but he knew it would be over before he could react. But he never struck again. In fact, Yoriichi would pass away standing upright in the middle of battle. Do you see why Yoriichi's displays of strength are so amazing and memorable? It's very reminiscent of Ari Makisha when you think about it. Extremely powerful characters being wiped out before they can even realize it, and referring to these guys as favored by the gods themselves. It's like these kind of quote-unquote strongest characters that I enjoy the most. But at this point, I think we get most of the surface level stuff. Yoriichi has some insanely strong moments that display his overwhelming strength over the entire cast, and that makes him a character that most cannot forget. But what if I told you that this strength is even more powerful than it already is? What if I told you that Yoriichi's power is one beyond just him showing how strong he is on screen and stomping everything out? This is where we're going to do a bit of analysis on Yoriichi's actions in the story, because I don't think Demon Slayer gets enough credit for its fantastic writing and how a lot of the things in the story actually come full circle. As we see, Yoriichi is a character that, despite all of his gifts, is cursed with solitude. A solitude that apparently defines his entire life. A solitude that fate will never allow him to escape from. He's held up as this messiah figure to many, one that none can reach, no matter how hard or far they reach throughout his entire story. Yet he finds himself to be nothing but a failure due to failing at the sole purpose of his existence, which was to eradicate Muzan. On top of this, he's failed with every other aspect of his life. But I believe that Yoriichi was incorrect in his belief of his failure, and in fact, did end up serving his purpose. Yoriichi, despite failing to put down Muzan himself, did many things for many other people that would lead to not only the defeat of Muzan, but the entire eradication of demons, the things that plague the world that he finds to be so beautiful. Now look, Yoriichi may have failed at actually defeating Muzan himself, but he taught his breathing styles to all of the Hashira of his time, who would then take those techniques, refine them, and pass them on to each generation leading up to the one present in Demon Slayer. Not only this, but the same sun breathing he displayed to Sumiyoshi's family would find its way right back to Muzan after centuries of him attempting to find and kill every single user of it ever. His actions and his existence did lead up to the eventual defeat of Muzan. The irony of this is that Yoriichi would spend the rest of his days searching for Muzan to defeat him, when he had already laid out the groundwork for his defeat many years before that. He did this because he believed that he, and he alone, was made to defeat Muzan, and this was his greatest mistake. Yoriichi was made to defeat Muzan, yes, but not alone. This is the reason why I say solitude plagues Yoriichi's life. No matter what, it always finds some way back to him, even if he brings it upon himself. Something Demon Slayer has always been about is the value of other people in your life. You are not just you. You are you and everyone who shaped and influenced you in some way. I really go into this and pretty much the true purpose of Demon Slayer in my Nobody Understands Tanjiro video, but to save you guys the time, there's a reason why all of these people jumping Muzan, battling against the upper moons, and all of their plans worked out, and it's because they had other people they could rely on. Muzan was never meant to be taken down by one man alone. The story didn't even let one person have the final hit on him, but the combined might of Giyu and Tanjiro, the two characters who started this story, combining the last of what they had left to create one last red blade. Everybody made Muzan's defeat happen, even including Yoriichi himself, as again, had he not done what he'd done, nobody would even be able to combat the demons. This is why flashbacks are pretty important to Demon Slayer as a whole, because they typically reinforce this by showing you what somebody else has done for the character, or how their words encourage them to push forward in one way or another. Tanjiro's words of advice or encouragement to his friends are something that constantly come up in the final arc, making these characters continue to fight with their hearts and souls against unwinnable odds. Not only this, but when we really look at the entire plotline of the Hinokami Kagura and the sun breathing and how it all comes together with Tanjiro witnessing Yoriichi himself do it, you're supposed to realize that Tanjiro was the failure. He wasn't crying for no reason at those times he lamented his ability to use the sun breathing, because he was actually correct. Everybody before him, including his extremely sick father, was actually able to practice the Hinokami Kagura to its fullest extent except for him. The story even very much implies that Tanjiro's father was the closest thing this world has ever came to reproducing Yoriichi. So how did such a failure directly produce the results that nobody before him could? You can come up with a few different answers here, such as teamwork or Yoriichi's groundwork from centuries in the past, but the message remains the same: the power of other people in your life. This is where the true impact lies. What you do for others and with others can.
I think when I see characters like Tanjiro, like the difference lies within their will to make a better world for others, their love for others, and what they lack is what others never allow themselves to even care about, which is others. And this is why characters like Tanjiro, who cares about everyone and everyone's happiness, actually gets to do something that no one else does, because everyone else is too busy being stuck in their selfish life within their selfish world that they interpret, right? While Tanjiro, for himself, he is part of this world, and each effort he gives himself to become better is also an effort that he wants to utilize to make to offer a better life to everyone around them. And this is quite the difference when it comes to like Tanjiro and other character in Demon Slayer, like even his father, that are like completely, or like Rengoku, or this is the logic of these characters that are like, why are they so strong? Well, they are like so weak and untalented, because the efforts that they give, and each efforts that they give, are motivated of their love of others and what they want to create for others and what they want to become for others, while other people are stuck in a selfish route where they don't care about they don't care about others. They just care about the missions. They just care about their own success. They just care about their own ranks. They just care about their own vengeance. And this is the difference between Tanjiro and other characters, let's say. And And I'd say, strangely enough, Muzan is actually a character that is similar to Tanjiro in a way, because he wants to create a world for himself and his demons, right? And so because of that, his motivation is not completely selfish. He's selfish and cruel to the demons. Yeah, but he offered them a place, and he offered them something. And each step that he does it not only for himself, but like Tanjiro, to be someone that is something in the life of others. I don't know if it makes sense, maybe it doesn't, whatever.
Sometimes have a greater impact than you normally think it would. The domino effect that many of the characters have in the series is so crazy that you have to reread Demon Slayer to truly understand what you were reading. So when I bring all of this back to Yoriichi, I think there's a realization that makes my heart ache very bad for this character. Because unlike every other character who got to be called the strongest, he doesn't ever get to understand what he's truly done for others, the true impact he's had on the world he loves so dearly. There's nothing but tragedy after tragedy for the man, and even after punishing himself to searching for Muzan for the rest of his life, fate couldn't help but spin in his face one last time with his brother's appearance as a demon. Yoriichi, despite initiating the saving of the world and being forced by fate to live a life of no control, doesn't even get to slightly understand what he's truly done. He exiles himself with the belief that he's truly failed at his sole purpose and has doomed everybody. The most he gets from this world is a thank you from Sumiyoshi and Tanjiro. I believe this is what makes Yoriichi a character that is so dear to me. He always reminds me to look outside of myself, to see the potential greater impact of my actions, and to even give myself a break at times. Yoriichi was a success and always had been from the moment he was born. In fact, Yoriichi was so successful that he completed his mission given by fate before he could ever realize it. I find Yoriichi to be one of the greatest depictions of the strongest because he manages to display many interpretations of the strongest on one character, while serving as a warning and a perspective shift for those who are open to it. Yoriichi's journey as the sun, this untouchable being that all strive towards, somewhat forces you to also realize the purpose of the entire story and really ponder what you took in. I believe he's more than deserving of being called an amazing representative of the strongest. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, thank you so much for watching, and
This was a great video. Thank you so much. 100. Subscribe to 100. 100. If you didn't, it was like really good stuff.